All right. Well, thank you, and welcome everyone to the next exciting episode here of Dynamics Downloads. Today we're going to be going through 50 tips in 50 minutes. Now, there's no guarantee that it's going to be 50 minutes, so I want it to be known up front. It could be 47. It could be 53. There's no guarantees here. So you're just going to have to hang with me, and we'll go through these together. And we'll get started right away. Maybe. If I can get to, there we go. All right, so now we're going to get started. So our first tip is the ability to link AP and PO documents. Many times vouchers are created for purchase orders prior to receipt, or maybe the purchase order isn't selected when users go to create the vouchers, and then you're left with a receipt that's sitting out there reflecting an unvouchered status. So in the past, we used to have to run SQL update statements to the database to remove those receipts from the unvouchered receipts report. Well, now we have this beautiful new screen that allows you to link the AP voucher to the PO receipt. Now the catch here is that just updates the tables. It will not do any accounting for you. So if you have a balance remaining in your AP clearing account, that's up to you to handle the accounting side. This is just to update the purchasing tables to reflect a vouchered status. So that was in 2011 that was added. So it's a good tool to use whenever you have the need to link those documents. Our next tip is the ability to reverse and correct, and copy batches in the General Ledger Journal Transactions screen. That little button there to the right of the batch number field will allow you to pull up this screen, and you can see it's that easy. You bring up the batch, you choose what you want to do with that batch, and those transactions get created. So it's very, very handy, very easy, very simple to use. Okay, and as we know, in version 2011, hard close was added, but it was an all or nothing option. You either hard closed all your modules or you didn't. Well, in Feature Pack 1, we added the ability to set those restrictions by module. So now if you want to hard close your inventory and your purchasing but leave your AP and AR open, you can do that. So you have that ability to now control it at the module level. So it's a very, people clamored for it, they wanted it, and they got it. And in the same vein here with the automatic batch reports, we know that in the past we were able to turn that on, but it was turned on for everything. And the folks over at the Wasted Paper Company, which is just outside of town here, they're very upset with us for creating this option, because now we can now choose by module which reports we want to generate and which we don't. By the way, the Wasted Paper Company, it's not real. I just made that. Next, the ability to delete batches from AR and AP. Now, even though an AR or AP batch goes to partially released status, none of the transactions in that batch get released. So unlike inventory, where you will have released and unreleased transactions held within the same batch, in AP and AR, if the whole batch can't release, it rolls everything back and nothing gets released. So wanted to add the ability to take those batches and just start over if you want to. You can just delete those batches now, and you can see there that I've got a partially released batch and my delete icon is enabled. I click that, and you're not going to believe this. After I click yes, that I'm sure I want to delete, we even added this fancy system message for you. So just in case you didn't know what deleted means, now we let you know that if you delete it, the detail is going to be, that's right, it's going to be deleted. So we give you another warning just to give you that last chance if you want to change your mind. And you can see that I said delete it, and it's gone. Next up, we got pay when pay terms. So there's times where you want to make sure that you don't pay your vendors or your salespeople before your customer pays you, which makes a lot of sense in some cases. So you can use the pay when paid terms, and we'll look at it here. So in the terms maintenance screen, you can set your apply to set to vendor, your discount type to pay when paid, and that creates your terms. So when you use that terms ID, you can link those vouchers to the invoices so that your checks won't cut until that invoice has been paid by your customer. And that's what the Pay When Paid Link Assistant looks like. So it allows you to link those documents pretty easily, and you can use the selection criteria to do that. Moving on, the ability to print preview the W-2 forms. That's a very handy tool that was added. So you can do this by, obviously we want you to make a copy of the backup of the database, the system database, and then the RPT control table holds a record for all the reports, and the report for the W-2 is 02741. If you set that doc prompt value to null, it will allow you to print preview your W-2s. Now, I don't know if you saw that or not. I'm going to go back. Now, look at the bottom where that print preview button is disabled. Watch this. Wow. It is now enabled. You can print preview your W-2s. That easy. All right. The ability to export data to Microsoft Excel. Anybody that's tried just copying and pasting out of an SL grid into Microsoft Excel, you know that comes with its own headaches. The formatting, the ability to easily read and determine the data that you're looking for, that all those problems have gone away with the addition of this fancy little button at the top here. So when you click that, the details from your grid automatically get carried into a workbook in Excel. And you can see that not only does it put the data in there, it formats the data, it creates the headers so that you can easily sort or filter using those columns. So very handy, and you can see the fancy blue and white lines to easily distinguish the different lines. So it's very easy to use and very helpful for a lot of people. Notes. Now, notes on reports, they're not always enabled. You don't always see the notes. Or in the ROI screen, where you go to generate the report, that print notes option is sometimes disabled. So how do you enable that? Well, it's not too difficult. If you can open the report in the Crystal Reports editor, you can add the S-Note table to the report, and then you just add the S-Note text field on the report. You save it into your user reports folder, and magically, and I wish I had a copy of the screen without the print notes enabled, because you'd see that it actually becomes enabled. It's really cool. All right, so this is one this has been a continuing question throughout my years working with customers and doing support cases. So the current OM period is always a question, because you don't see OM period anywhere other than this screen. So there's no OM period in the closing screen in GL. It's nowhere. So what is the current OM period? Well, we can see the period number at the top of the screen there, but how is it coming up with that period number? It's very simple. It's whatever the most recent period is between inventory and AR. And this sometimes gets people in trouble, because they'll want to change the period in inventory but leave AR in the previous period if they still want to do invoicing and stuff for that last period. Well, if you do that, if you increase or if you close your period in inventory, it's going to update your current period in OM. So it's whichever one is more recent, and then when you generate your sales journal and you have this option selected, your invoices are now going to post to that next period. So it's something to be careful of. Good tip. All right, project-related shippers. So you now have the ability in project maintenance to determine how the invoice is going to be handled out of order management. You now have three options. Your first option is to just continue allowing the invoice to create and process the way it always has. In order management sends over an invoice batch to AR. The new options are the ability to invoice in flexible billings. So instead of creating invoices out of OM and having a separate invoice for your materials and a separate invoice for your labor, you can now take those transactions and have them load directly into flexible billings, not generate an invoice in OM, not generate a batch in AR, but just send the transactions over to flexible billings to be included on an invoice out of the flexible billings module to update AR. So that's the second option. The third option is to not create an invoice at all. Just take that shipper, allow it to process, generate the paperwork you need to ship the stuff out, and there is no invoicing feature, and that's for projects that would be on a % complete or a milestone billing, fixed amount projects. Now the costs will still flow in, obviously, to the project, but there's no invoicing involved. This is an order management tip, the task server. Now I've talked to many customers, many even partners that don't even know what task server is. Well, task server is available in the order management module, and it allows you to take the reporting processes out of Process Manager's workload. A lot of times during the middle of the day when orders are heavy and you've got multiple users creating transactions or creating orders and creating shippers, Process Manager can get bogged down with the printing process because it'll wait until the report generates and it completes before it moves on to the next record in the process queue. So it can cause it to back up. Well, what you can do is set up Task Server to automatically print the reports specified here. This is the list of all the reports that are available to use with Task Server, and you can have those reports generate at a frequency that you select. You determine how often it should run, and then every 5 minutes, let's say, it's going to go out there, look for any orders or any shippers that are at the step waiting for that report to be generated, and it generates that report for all of those shippers at once, and it allows Process Manager to focus on the rest of the processing of moving orders along through the order types. So it's a pretty handy little tool. You should check it out if you have a need and you see that Process Manager is backing up. This is an option to speed things up with it. Okay, so I'm not sure anybody's familiar with the project inventory additions, but with those new features came this option in OM Setup to send the project and task from a sales order to a purchase order. In the past, anytime you tried linking a purchase order to a sales order, the only purchase for type available was goods for sales order. So you couldn't send a project, you couldn't specify a project and task on a purchase order that was tied to a sales order. With this new option, we now have a different purchase for type called goods for project sales order. And what that basically does is it allows you to show that purchase order as a commitment on your project while still linking it to the sales order so that the sales order waits for the receipt of that purchase order to continue processing through the order type steps. So cool little option there. I've already seen people taking advantage of that and using that to benefit their visibility into their projects. And, oh, look, I'm even going to show you an example. Here we go. So here's a sales order with a project and task specified. We're going to pretend that I went down and clicked the PO button and I entered my vendor ID, I clicked the auto create PO, and whammo. We've got a purchase order using the goods for project sales order purchase for type. And if I scrolled across there, you'd see the project and task specified. And since the PO number is saved, our project commitments have already been updated as well. All right, has anybody ever noticed a void status AR batch or a void status inventory issue batch? Well, these batches sometimes get, look, and I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to call anybody out. But sometimes during the sales journal process, users will accidentally click the cancel button. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe it's even a network connectivity issue during that post-process that the sales journal runs. Well, whatever the case, if anything causes the sales journal process not to complete normally, it leaves the batches sit out there with a void status and an unreleased released flag on the batch record. Anytime that happens, you're not going to find your invoices, your inventory is not going to be issued out, and people wonder why. And this, like I said, this is another one that came from the support team. This is a big call generator, and it's very easy to correct. All you got to do is you'll notice which invoices you're missing, because you want to get paid by those customers, I'm assuming. So all you got to do is go back to one of the shippers, find the sales journal ID for one of those shippers on the other information tab of the shipper, and then rerun the sales journal. And on the options tab of the sales journal, all you have to do is specify that sales journal ID in the sales journal ID field. And again, you can see I've got leading zeros there. It's got to be 10 digits, so include all leading zeros. You can print preview that report again and close it. It goes back through the post-process, verifies that the batches are all okay and that they have all the transactions that they should have, and then it sets the batches to balance, or if you have it turned on, it'll automatically release the batches for you. So easy tip there to get around that issue. Okay, moving into project now. So I've got a knowledge base article specified there, 847572. This talks about closing project controller, and you notice that your totals are incorrect. So sometimes what happens is in project maintenance, that balance forward at year-end option, it's just a checkbox, so sometimes it gets overlooked. If that's not checked, when you close the year, it's not going to roll that forward. So how do you fix it? Well, you check it, and then you run the PMA integrity check for the project, and that will recalculate it and rebuild that that beginning balance for the next year. So you don't have to reclose the module. So that's the key. And here's where that, I don't know that I highlighted it, but you can see that balance forward at year-end option right in the middle of the screen. Did I? Yeah, I did. Okay. Moving on. So what is the difference between closing the period in project and just updating the project controller setup? Now, everybody knows that there are times where you have to update that period to get transactions processed in. And you can do that, and you should do that. But the rule of thumb here is to always change it back. You know, use that field in the setup to change the period back and allow you to process transactions in through the financial transaction transfer. But don't use it to go forward. If you use the close period, it'll actually make sure that your balance forward amounts are correct, and it's going to make sure that your project to date and year to date amounts are updated correctly. So rule of thumb, if you need to change it backward to get transactions to process in, do that in the project controller setup. Otherwise, always use the close period. Okay, and it's warning me that I may be experiencing network connection difficulties, but I'm going to continue. Okay. All right. Here's another good one. You're running Project Allocator, and you get the message that there are no allocation records. Now, why would that be? Well, maybe, just maybe, I'm just spitballing here, but maybe you don't have any transactions that qualify, right? So how do you know? Well, there's a KB article, 844051, and that gives you the set of SQL scripts that you can run to identify which transactions will be selected, and it also explains why. Another reason is that maybe the period in the related module is not the same that's in Project Controller, which is where we just discussed. You can change that backward to process those transactions in if necessary. All right, QuickSend. So this is just a general tip regarding QuickSend. Nothing specific, just the ability to use QuickSend. It's been out there for a while. Lots of people are taking advantage of the features that it provides. And here's just a list of some of the documents that you can use QuickSend for. I've seen people use it for all of these, and it works very well. Of course, like any new feature, it's had its issues, but I think we're on the other side of it. And it does use application server, so you have to have application server. And just a general tip that if you haven't looked into using QuickSend, now's a good time to do so. Speaking of QuickSend, and now that I've told you to, I'm sure you're going to go out and want to go step that up. So when you do that, this is a tip that kind of, when you're setting up, you need to know this. So the Dynamics SL will only detect fax machines that display that fax icon in the printers and devices. So the example here that I was showing you, the one on the left, that's going to be the fax machine that SL will use. If you have a fax component to one of your printers, like the one on the right, it won't be able to use that. It has to use the Microsoft fax services. So that's a good tip going forward if you're going to use the fax capability. Not sure anybody's still using faxes, but it's possible. Speaking of faxing documents, look at this. The next tip is about the cover sheet. Now, there is a default cover sheet that gets created, and there's a copy of it there. That's what it looks like. But you can change that. You can modify it, and you can do that by finding that qscoverpage.cov and using either FS cover or FXS cover, depending on the operating system. I believe it's FXS cover as well for Windows 8. So you can find that in the System32 folder. Open that .cov file, and it allows you to edit that document. So you can customize that fax cover sheet with whatever data you'd like to have on it. All right, so how do you resend an invoice, purchase order, or OM shipping document? Well, there's a few screens that you can go through and resend that directly out of. But basically, the shared information menu, you can use the filters there to specify your customer number, your ref number, your purchase order, and all you got once you pull it up, all you have to do is click that resend request. And even a case where maybe you send it to the people that are listed here, but there's another person that needs to get a copy of that, and you can send that to a one-time receiver. And you click send to one-time receiver, and that allows you to specify the email address to send that document to. And did you know that in those emails, you can use variables within the text? And here's the list of variables that are recognized by the program. So customer name, reference number, document amount. These are the ones that you can add when you're setting up the document. So in this case, for the vendor maintenance, under the QuickSend tab, I've got the company name, the reference number, and the document amount to be added into the text of the subject and the body. So it just personalizes the document for your vendor, for your customer, for your employee when you set that up. So just gives you a little more detail, can give the detail regarding the document without making them open the document. So it can be helpful. All right, so the next couple are little tips that I found that work with Solomon INI, which is a file that sits out there that SL reads to find little cool little things like this. So knowing that we all may be of a certain age, sometimes it's hard to read the reports, especially when you print preview. Those reports sometimes they look pretty small, and the first thing you have to do is go change the zoom percentage and blow it up so that you can actually read it. Well, did you know that you could set that to default the value, the zoom percentage, so you could make it 300% or 200% based on the report that you use. So all you got to do is add that value. You see the example up there. You add that to your Solomon INI, and when you run that report, it'll come out here and look and say, oh, I need to zoom in to 300%. So as soon as you print preview, you see it at that very easy to read level. So I love that tip. That's one of my favorites. Next is the graphical dispatch board. So I don't know, those that use Service Dispatch, you have the ability to launch the service call entry screen from the graphical dispatch board. So by default, when you do that and you have a service call entry screen open and you go back to the graphical dispatch board to open another service call, it'll use that same window to open the next service call. So you can't. So it'll close the previous one and open the next one. You can change that by setting that value in the Solomon INI, and in this case, to make it open a separate window, you change the express mode to F, and then each time you click on a service call from the graphical dispatch board, a new service call entry screen will be launched. Cool little tip there. Okay, site ID validation. So this is one that was found years ago, actually. There's a little feature here in the inventory module, this active site for this item. And if you have a large database and you have a large INTRAN table, the ability to pull up these PVs when you F3 on the site ID field in some screens, it tries helping you by showing you which sites the item is active in, but that can also take a lot of time to pull up. So it's got to read through the entire database to find all the sites that item is used in. So you can turn that off by setting the validation to on. It's kind of counterintuitive, but if you set that to on, it removes that field from the PV, because typically you know which site you're looking for and you know which site you want to use it in. You don't really care whether it's been active or not. So another tip to speed up your processing if you're using that. Okay, and then another general tip, we're going to go through a couple of these kind of 30,000 feet tips, and that's the report assistants. They're out there, and they're used by customers and partners that need to create new reports or even modify the existing reports. And you can download them on Customer Source or Partner Source. And here's an example of what you'd see out there. And you can see they're grouped by module. And they just basically walk you through where the data in the report's coming from and what options create what results. So a lot of time was spent working on these, and they're very helpful, very thorough. I would suggest you go out there and download them if you have any specific reporting needs that you're trying to address. And another general DocShare tip. You have the ability to create SharePoint sites with one click from a maintenance screen, and you can then automatically publish your documents out to that SharePoint site for retention and access. And we'll see an example here. So these icons here, once you set up the SharePoint integration, these buttons are enabled and will take you directly out to your SharePoint site. So DocShare is new, and I think it was 2011 it was added. It could be 2011 FP1. But if you're on the newer version and you should check that out. That's the tip. The ability to upload reports to SharePoint. So any report can be uploaded to SharePoint now. So in the printer options screen, you'll see a new option there to upload to SharePoint. Once you select that option, you have to tell it what the destination file will be, what the path is. So once you specify that and the file type, and then you go back to your report, you'll notice, and again, here's another one where I didn't capture the before, but this is the after. And you can see that the button in the lower left-hand corner, normally that would say print, but now, that's right, it says upload. I promise, though, it did say print before I selected the SharePoint site. So really cool feature. Speaking of SharePoint, my goodness, look at this. In Business Portal, you also have that same ability. So you can, from Business Portal, send the reports out to that SharePoint site. Very cool. Oh, but it doesn't stop there. Look at this, Business Portal. we're talking about Business Portal just a second ago. Did you know that you can print any standard SL, Crystal, or SSRS report directly from Business Portal? So yeah, you can do that. A lot of people don't realize that. Okay, so again, this is one of my favorites. So I'm going to take a second here because this is something that I've struggled with many times in my career, is dealing with reporting issues where a value shows up on a report and I have no idea where it came from. Well, this is a beautiful little trick that another consultant taught me, and this was a great addition to this slideshow. All you got to do is generate your report, preview your report, export it out to an RPT format, to a Crystal Reports format. And maybe some of you already know this, but this just blew my mind. So you open that RPT file with your data, and you can see that this is my invoice that I had printed. Open it in Crystal Reports, and then in this case, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I wanted to see where that shipper ID value is coming from. What field in the report is generating that value? Well, you can see that here in Crystal Reports, you've got a Preview tab and a Design tab. So once I change the color of that field, and I go over to the Design tab, look at this. It uses that same color to show you in the design format which field you're dealing with. I'm going to give you a second just to absorb that, because that's a huge help when dealing with reporting issues. So just take your time and just soak that one in. Really, I use that as an excuse to take a drink. I'm getting a little thirsty here. But next up, we've got Business Analyzer. And this is another general new feature tip, that you can now use Business Analyzer to create a dashboard for users that aren't always in SL. Maybe it's a user that you don't want in SL, but they need data, project managers, CEOs, anybody that would benefit from seeing the data out of the database without actually being in there. And another cool thing is that it deploys independently of SL. You don't have to have an SL client to run Business Analyzer. As a matter of fact, in Windows 8, if you go out to the App Store, you will see a free, that's right, free Business Analyzer download. So feel free to go out there and go crazy. Speaking of Business Analyzer, those pretty little reports that get generated, they have SSRS reports behind them. And those SSRS reports can be easily created from a quick query. So using quick query, you can go in and create a custom quick query, and you can then take that query, that view, and use this report generation wizard to create your SSRS reports that can be viewed in Business Analyzer. So they've really come a long way in making this very user-friendly, and the ability to walk through this report generation wizard. And again, you have drill down capabilities with this, so you can have a summary report that links to a detail, which links to a drill down, and it can actually even link back to an SL screen if you have a client installed. So if you open that report, drill down, let's say the customer balance report. You drill down from there into the customer documents. You drill down from the documents into the transactions. You can open the invoice and memo screen directly from the report. So very powerful set of tools that are out there waiting for you to take advantage of them. This one's from 2011. This was so many of you have already seen this. You're already familiar with it, but it was worth mentioning again. The ability to use that company icon to show you a list of recent companies. You can reload that. You can clear it out, but you're able to use that instead of logging out of a user and logging in. You're able to just use that company icon button at the top of SL to easily navigate between companies. And again, you can clear and recreate the list. You can change the colors. to make it more visible, more noticeable. So just a cute little tip there. The favorites. The favorites in SL 2011 are very, very helpful. And I don't know that everyone understands that you can load different websites. You can open web pages. You can open external links to different reports, like the example is Excel, any Excel spreadsheet you want to have linked. And you can also add screens and screen groups into your favorites. So you could basically run your entire day out of SL using your favorites. Your Facebook page, your Twitter page, all that can be loaded directly. Wait, nope, this is just that your boss has just asked me not to mention that Facebook and Twitter can be, but they, maybe, yeah, they can, but they didn't want me to tell you that they could. Anywho, here's an example of what it looks like in the screen. You know, you go to the Tools menu and you have those options there, and as soon as you click them, you will see the favorites become populated. You can edit and organize those favorites, move them up, move them down, just by right-clicking on your favorites. So very helpful set of tools there with the favorites section. The Super PV. There's a couple screens that have Super PVs. I didn't even know this, so I thought I'd mention it. So an example is the General Ledger account history and project time card entry. So there's the examples of what you see when you hit F3 and what you see if you hit Shift F3. Again, there's not a lot of these, but since I didn't even know they existed, I thought I would mention them. And we'll look at an example of the account history. So if you F3, we see the account, the description, and the type. See there? I pointed them out with big red arrows. Now if I Shift F3, boom, I've got account, sub-account, ledger, and fisc year. How about that? Pretty powerful stuff. Custom menus. So let's say you built some really cool menus in SL, and you want to have the ability to back them up. You may want the ability to share it with a friend. Maybe you've got a friend who works for a company that also uses SL, and you think this menu may benefit them. Well, you can do that. All you got to do is go into menu maintenance. You click the action button. You've got to select your menu for the group, your group menu, and you can import and export those menus as much as you'd like. So you could export it, provide the file to your friend can go to his company and import it, and boom, he gets the advantage of your hard work. Of course, you could also sell it. You could sell it to him, make a buck here or there. All right, so a couple customization tips. So I think a lot of times customers don't realize how easy it is to use customize mode to make some pretty significant differences in the way they process. I've been on site with customers that have constantly been tab to get to the field that they want, not realizing that it'd be very simple to change the tab order in that screen. So how do you do it? You just go into customize mode, you click on the field that you want to edit, you hit F4, and you see that tab index value. So the suggestion here would be click on the field before the field you would want to move to be after. I don't know if that made sense, but so if I have inventory ID and then it goes location, site ID, quantity, but I wanted to move the quantity right after inventory ID, I would look at the inventory ID tab index, and let's say it's 48. Then when I go to my field that I want to move, I open that one, I go to the tab index, I make that 49, and it automatically updates the tab index for the rest of the fields at that level, and it makes room so that when you start tabbing through and after you save that, the tab order will display correctly. So it'll move your fields wherever you want them. It's that easy. Just to save the customized change of the tab index and save, and you're in business. Okay, so sometimes you have maybe a user field that was added or some other field that you want to make sure is never left blank. But it's not a required field based on the screen, on the default SL screen. Same thing. You open the screen in customize mode, click on the field you want to edit, you hit F4, and the blank ERR field. As soon as you set that to true, that becomes a required field. Now again, there's some fields that are controlled by the source code, so it will not let you. So if you try to change that and then try to save it, it'll let you know if you don't have the ability to change that. If the screen has to control it, you'll get an error saying something about S code control. But if it's a field that you've added, maybe a user field, you can set that to required, and that entry will not be allowed to be made unless that field is populated. Now maybe it's a field that you don't always have. You don't want it to be required to be populated every time, but it's a field that you want to make sure that they check. Well, you can highlight the background of that field by going into customize mode, go into the properties, and you see that back color value, and you see that beautiful palette of wonderful colors. And you can change the background of that field to show that color. Now black, I've seen that doesn't work very well with black lettering. But you can also change the color of your letters. So if you want the background to be black and the foreground to be white, you can do that. Just a little tip. That's why I'm here. How about customize mode on subscreens? It's been on all these other screens, but the subscreens do not have the customize button or the customize mode button available. So Control Alt-C allows you to, within that subscreen, open it in customize mode. So, and as you know, if you're on the main screen and you go into customize mode, you can't open subscreens at that point because you're in customize mode. So open the subscreen, Control Alt-C, and now you're in the subscreen in customize mode. Pretty cool. All right, here's another one of my favorites. These we're going to go over all these options here, and these are the F keys, these usability shortcuts that I'm talking about, the F keys. Now you know a lot of them, but I'll bet there's a couple you're not aware of. F1, of course, we all know is online help or help files within SL. F2 allows you to edit a field or set an absolute or relative formula for a date or period. F3 is the PV. We all know F3. And we should know F4 switches between form and grid views, so it's the difference between looking at one record and looking at all the records in the grid. But F5, this one is the one that, this one got me in so much trouble not knowing this, because I would tab through a line, get to the field that I want to take the value out of, and what would I do? I would hit delete. And what does that do when you're just tabbing by? It deletes the entire line. That's right. So many times I've done this, and it's just such a pain. So normally what I would have to do, because I didn't know about F5, I would F2 and then hit delete, and that clears the value. So it puts me in the field, and then it clears the value. But F5, right from tabbing over to it, F5 clears that value. Love that. Love that F5. F7 is today's date. You should know that. F9, did you know that that'll open and display the notes for whatever level you're on? Pretty cool. And F10, this is another big one for me. A lot of times I'll end up with, I don't know, 8 or 9 different sail, dynamics sail icons on my taskbar since they don't put names on them anymore. So I've got to go back through and try to find which one is my main menu to go open yet another screen. But F10, all I got to do is hit F10, and it puts focus right back on the main SL window. Just blew your mind. I know, these are awesome. Going back to QuickSend, sometimes you actually want to print a physical copy of an invoice in AR, let's say. So how do you do that? Well, there is a quick print option in the invoice and memo screen. You can also drill down into the QuickSend inquiry and view the document and print it from there. So there at the top you see the quick print option, which works just fine. But if you'd also like to go into the QuickSend inquiry, you can hit that button, That brings up your inquiry screen. You can click the View Document button, which brings up your invoice, and then you can just print it right from there. Pretty cool. What about all modules? Everybody, I don't know if everybody's noticed that. Sometimes people have it, sometimes they don't. I just want you to know that if you have it there and you don't want it, you can get rid of it. If you don't have it and you want to be able to use the all modules, you can do that through the options. So right there, all module navigation and navigation pane section allows you to do that. Pretty cool. Event log records. Sometimes they get pretty backed up and they get pretty full. So I would suggest that you talk to your partner to make sure you understand the full process, but you can actually remove those from the P-status table. So deleting them from the P-status table will take care of the issue, but what I don't want you to do is delete the records directly out of the event log folder, because we all know, even I do it, go to the event log folder to really find it based on the date and time. But if you delete them out of there, then they're going to be stuck in that P-status table. You're going to still see them in your event log viewer. And if you try to click on one, it's going to give you an error that it can't find the file. So it's a big mess if you try deleting them from the event log, so don't do that. Attachments. This is a cool addition. So you can now attach documents. You can pull them back up and view them in SL in the screens by setting up the attachments. So you can set that to a SharePoint site, or you can set it to a network location. And we'll look at the setup of that. So attachments configuration, you can set up a default. So for any screen that allows attachments, if you set up this record in the attachments configuration, it'll set the default location for all attachments to be stored. Okay, and that can be, like I said at the bottom there, it could be a URL, be a UNC path to a network location, but that would serve as your default. But you can also have attachments for specific screens sent to a specific location. So if you want to segregate different attachments from others, you can do that by screen. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty easy setup too. Application server. This is a tip just saying that you know, this is work that it has to be done. Maybe it's done on a regular basis, and you want to kind of offload that to other machines. Well, you can schedule it. You can schedule it to run whenever you specify, and you can even do it based on the completion of another event. So an example here, some of the things you can process requests. You can run reports. You can send quick send documents. You can even do transaction import processes. And we'll look at an example. What I'm going to do is set up an application server job that will go out and post transactions for me. So what do? You go to Actions, you click the Submit to Application Server, and that brings your Submit to Application Server screen up. You can choose your companies that you want to run it for. You set the schedule. So in this case, and you see the schedule information doesn't populate until you set the frequency. So once you set the frequency, you can specify exactly when or how often or what range, what time range you want to run these. So it's lots of flexibility in the scheduling, and then you can have reports generate to specific users. You click the Submit button, and it's submitted. That's it. All right, connector for CRM. So this diagram gives you a high-level view of the data that's shared between CRM and SL. The connector uses a web service to connect the data from CRM to SL. And last year, the customer web service was released, which enabled the creation of this connection. So as new web services become available that can connect with CRM, we'll look into enhancing those connections. But right now, these are the connections between CRM and SL. So if you're using both CRM and SL, you now have the tools here to connect the two products. That's why they call it a connector. I'm not sure if you guys put that together, but that's why I'm here. All right, an environment tip here, folks. Okay, so when you're installing on Windows XP or Windows 7, I believe Windows 8 as well, actually, you want to make sure that the user account controls are turned off before you install it. If you don't do that, the setup process isn't going to be able to register the DLLs it needs to register, and it's not going to work. You're going to get errors. You're going to see that you'll see that there it is. The UNC path will show in the program path, so that's a big red flag. That's not good. So you can turn that off, install it, and then you can turn it back on if you'd like. If you'd like to keep those turned on. But just to show you exactly where that's at, go to User Accounts, change User Account Control Settings, and you set that to Never Notify. Click OK. May have to reboot, but then install it, and then you can turn it back on if you'd like, if you enjoy that black screen and pop-up window as a protection, I guess. So feel free to do that. And folks, we're down to our last tip for the day. And this is just a general tip. Go out and follow MSDYNSL on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter, and then follow MSDYNSL. And also the blog is out there as well. Our good friend Jeff Suen works very, very hard to update these like almost every 6 months. So, but the key is more followers. More followers means more content. Let's really make him work. So go out there and follow the blog. And with that, I am done. So we'll take this time to go out and look and see what questions we have. Is there a tip for printing flexible billing invoice by customer? I'm sure there is. That's a good question, but it's a question that I'm going to take offline, and I will definitely let you know what I find out about that. Melanie, do you see any other questions? I am looking, and it looks like it's cut off for me. I don't see the whole column.
I don't see anything showing up. We do have a request to see the website again. If you could back up a slide.
Oh, sure. I think. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. And while that slide is being viewed, I would just like to take a moment and point out if there are any questions that come up after our session has ended today, feel free to send those to our email address, which is msdynamicsevents@gmail.com. Again, that's msdynamicsevents@gmail.com. We can always follow up with you, any questions that come in there as well. I don't see any other questions coming in here at the moment, so I think you sped through it all and they've got all their questions answered, Jason.
They're just blown away right now.
I guess so.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason, for presenting. Thanks to all the attendees for taking time out of your day to attend our Dynamics Downloads webinar. Today's session was recorded, and we hope to have it available for viewing in the near future on the Dynamics Downloads channel on YouTube. The next Dynamics Downloads webinar is going to be on Wednesday, November 27th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will cover our year-end topics in Microsoft Dynamics SL. So we look forward to having you attend that one as well. Thanks again, everyone.